Have you ever tried to put two puzzle pieces together and they just won't fit no matter how hard you try? That's like the same thing as adding fractions that have different denominators. Remember, their denominators are the bottom number of a fraction, and they represent how many pieces your whole is broken up into. So, for example, for 3/4, our whole is broken up into 4 pieces, and the numerator represents how many of those pieces we have. Now, we can't add two fractions together that have different denominators because the whole is broken up into different size pieces. Those third pieces are a different size than the fourth pieces. The first step that we need to take is to find the lowest common denominator. This way, we can make sure that our wholes are broken up into the same amount of pieces. We do this by taking the two denominators and lining them up above each other. We then choose one of these numbers and we start finding the multiples of that number. While we're finding the multiples of that number, we're thinking, are any of these multiples also a multiple of the other number? So for example, I'll start with 3. I'm going to skip count by 3 and see if any of the digits are a multiple of 4. 3, 6, that's not a multiple of 4. 9, not a multiple of 4. 12. 12 is a multiple of 4 because you can multiply 4 by 3 to get to 12. So at the bottom, I'm going to write all the multiples of 4 to get to 12 just to double check my work. 4, 8, 12. Our next step is to make equivalent fractions with a common denominator. The point of this is to see if we broke the whole up into the same amount of pieces, how many pieces would we have for each fraction? So for example, for 2/3, I want to see how many pieces we would have if we broke the whole up into 12 pieces. In order to figure this out, I'm first going to set up my fractions. So I'm going to separate the 2/3 and the 3/4 into two different equations. I'm going to put the 2/3 to the left with an equal sign and then a 12 as the denominator. I'm going to do the same thing for the 3/4 and set it up the same way. It's important to understand that when we're making equivalent fractions, we're not changing the number that we have. Instead, we're just representing it in a different way. Here, we have 3/4 represented to the right. If I want to change that to a fraction with a denominator of 12, I need to break up that whole into 12 pieces. Now I have 12 pieces, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 of those pieces are shaded in. But as we can see, that's still the same thing as 3/4. So the way that we're going to figure out how to find equivalent fractions is by seeing what do you need to multiply the original denominator by to get to the common denominator. In this case, 4 times blank equals 12. It's 4 times 3. So if I know that I need to multiply the bottom 4 by 3 to get 12, I need to do the same exact thing to the top to make sure that we're not changing that number. So I multiply 3 by 3, and I get 9. I do the same thing with 2/3, figuring out what do I need to multiply by the original number in order to get to our common denominator. So what do I need to multiply by 3 to get to 12? 3 times 4 is 12, so I know that I need to multiply the numerator by the same number. 2 times 4 is 8. Now that we have fractions with common denominators, here comes the easy part. All we have to do is add the fractions. Our first step is we add the numerator. 8 plus 9 is 17. And our second step is that the denominator stays the same. because our whole is still broken up into the same amount of pieces, 12. Our last step is to simplify the fraction. We now have 17 over 12. We know that that's more than 1 because the numerator is bigger than the denominator. So the first thing we have to do is we have to take out the whole numbers. If we take out 12 over 12 from 17 over 12, we're left with 5 twelfths. So our 12 twelfths becomes 1 whole, and our 5 twelfths stays the same. Our next step is to simplify the fraction that's left over. We have 5 twelfths, which can't be simplified any further, so we can leave our answer as 1 and 5 twelfths.